Hello viewers, welcome to our lecture series on Indian ethos in management, and in today's lecture I am going to tell you about the omnijective theory, which is a new dimension of OD, that is called organizational development. This is going to be first part of this omnijective theory of organizational development. When we say omnijective, it actually combines the objectivity and subjectivity both in one, and that is why it is regarded as a new dimension of organizational development. So, I will be telling you briefly about the background of this new dimension of OD, that why do we need this new dimension of omnijective theory into organizational development. Then we will talk about necessity for this new approach, why do we need and what do we need, what has changed and the way it has changed, that also is a point of concern for us, and eventually we will talk about the social transition from tradition to cosmonity, that the way we have traveled from traditional system to the cosmonity, that journey I will be sharing with you. And we will talk about profit maximization to profit optimization, behavioral psychology to spiritual psychology, and towards the farthest reaches of human behavior, which is actually the basic trait of Indian ethos in management. When we talk about organizational development and omnijective theory, there is a noted research by Rajan Gupta in 1996, and in that paper he actually questions the entire idea, the entire discourse, that is there a place for the sacred in organizations and their development, whether we need the sacred, the term sacred into this organizations or business enterprises. And this entire discourse has argued for a place for the sacred in the theory of organizational development. And when we say sacred, people actually relate it to the religious thought or the religious idea, or at times they relate it to the religious fanaticism, which is not at all the idea behind this. And the term sacred is really sacred here, and it is taken in a different spirit. And when we say spirit, it actually goes to the spirituality. Here the author indicates that the OD, as articulated in the entire academic literature, it has largely been an American manifesto. When we use this term organizational development, majority of the researchers from academia and practitioners from the industry, they actually relate it to the American manifesto, that it came from there, it emanates from there. This OD practice is primarily rooted in linear and mechanistic models of change. They believe that it is very much mechanical, it is very much linear in terms of the model of change. There is no algorithm into that. So, we need to understand the algorithm behind that. When we say algorithm, there is a rhythm into that. So, we have to understand what the OD practice is, and it is primarily rooted whether in linear and mechanistic models of change, or it is more than that. Being secular in nature, this term OD, it had no place for the word sacred. People from industry and academia, they consider it to be a very secular word, and since they are relating spirituality or spirit to the religion, that is why they say that we have no place for calling it the sacred one. Although the recent experiences of application of the sacred in organizational context offers interesting insights, you would realize that the way the entire thinking pattern or the thought process has changed. Gupta has cited the Gustafson's work and Chakrabarti's experiments in organizational development using spiritual approach. He cites these two authors to use this, who have used this spiritual approach, and presents it as a challenge for the entire fraternity who is working into the organizational development, who is working in the field of organizational development. Now, the question comes from where it originated, this entire omnijective theory of organizational development, from where it originated. So, every challenge needs a new framework or a new theory that should transcend the existing theory. And since the new theory suggested here in the name of omnijective theory, it incorporates the sacred as a component of the OD. This approach may also be called as new OD, the new one, in contrast to the old OD. So, the basic difference between the old OD and new OD is of approach, of either including sacred word or excluding sacred word. This is the line of difference between the two. We call our approach as omnijective theory because the term omnijective actually refers to the fusion of both, that is objective and the subjective. And we all know the power of subjectivity, and we all know the meticulousness of objectivity, the benefit of being objective. Now, moving ahead, Michael Talbot in his book Mysticism and New Physics. Imagine we are talking about the organizational development and we are referring to the book on new physics, on mysticism and new physics. It uses the word, this word to describe the quantum phenomenon, wherein objective reality is inextricably connected with observer's subjective consciousness. Imagine that whatever you are basically interpreting as objective reality, that is connected with my subjective consciousness. Can I differentiate the two? Can I make it away? Can I ensure that it is away from my subjective consciousness? Of course, it cannot be done. If I do so, that interpretation is not possible. So, this is the reason why this omnijective theory of organizational development is of immense importance as on date. The question comes, why do we need, what we need we have discussed, why do we need this new approach? So, we have to understand the place of the sacred in historical and contemporary context. What is the place? Although the Gupta, the researcher who actually started this entire discourse uses a dichotomy of pre-modern era and the modern era, but we may use some other classification of social transition to offer you a holistic approach towards omnijective approach of omnijective theory of OD. The first one is traditionality. If I say traditionality, it belongs to, it gives a reflection of a market which is agriculture based, where we used to have the settled communities. They used to feel settled into their own task, that I am into agriculture work, I am agriculture based, and traditionally they feel that they are settled communities. Then came modernity, where we started talking about the nation state concept, where we started talking about the federalism, federal system, we started talking about industrial science and technology driven community, the community which is driven by science and technology. So, even if I am doing agriculture, I do not find myself settled. I actually search for the latest technology, the latest developments in science and technology. So, I belong to that community, and that is called being modern. So, even if I am belonging to the traditional activity, I do the traditional work, still my concern is, my updation is in terms of science technology driven community. I assume myself to be a part of that science and technology driven community. Then comes the next level, beyond modernity. Now, some people think that beyond modernity there is nothing, because we only talk about being traditional or modern, these are the only two approaches. But the third one is cybernity. When I say cybernity, it is indicative of global village, considering the entire world to be a family. Some people ask me, sir, why do we call it global village? Why do not we call it global city? Because in a village, if you meet one person, you come to know about each and every person or each and every resident of that village. In village, there is complete communication. You ask about any family, that how many children they have, who is the bread earner in that family, what is their basic job. So, everything about that family is known to everyone, and that is why the concept of global village is an indicative of a place where we are aware of each other. So, global village is an indicative of eliminating that communication gap. Services and information based community. So, now we belong to a community which is more of information based community. Here the information is power for us, and we nowadays we call that we have consumers who are basically information rich but time poor. They have information, but they do not have time. So, this cybernity is basically an indicative of a community which is information rich and time poor. There is a concept of global village. They are services based, and services economy comes to the economy is basically based on the service sector. The last one is cosmonity, which is actually the future. It is very much futuristic, cosmic worldview driven community, where you look at the future, that 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line, this would be the scenario. So, here we assume that we belong to a community which is futuristic, which is cosmic worldview driven. We can imagine that 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line, what would happen. So, beyond cybernity, we are looking at cosmonity. So, this is very much important for us to understand that the way we have traveled from traditionality to modernity, then to cybernity, and now we are at a stage where we talk about cosmonity, which is driven by, which is actually motivated from the idea of being a cosmopolitan country, being a cosmopolitan person. So, cosmonity is basically very much futuristic, the worldview driven community. Now, if we understand these four stages, these four communities, then we can understand the need of this omnijective theory of OD. So, by cybernity, we actually imply a quality of being in a society which is called as information society, wherein there is a greater interconnectivity of minds, and that interconnectivity is facilitated through computer networks, and that is why we call it cybernity. In fact, the cyber revolution, it has made it easier for us to understand the role of subtle over the gross and the mind over the matter, and thereby the role of this spiritual approach of omnijective theory. So, it is a cyber revolution which is adding fuel to this entire discourse, to this entire idea of omnijective theory. Cosmonity, if you ask me, I would say it is a speculative term for the future scenario, and it may include space travel and a worldview of cosmic connectivity and its impact on humans. Rather, I would say, my dear learners, it is an open-ended term, and according to your perception, according to your background, you may add new things into this cosmonity. You may add your own future. You may craft your own future. It is just like weaving your dreams, that this is what I can see, and this will be the kind of impact on humans. So, cosmonity is a speculative term. Like nowadays we talk about laptop, then we started talking about palm top, and somebody was telling me about having an imagination. It is just like giving you an imagination that can we have a nose top, that there is a computer which can be fit on our nose, and we can say that this is the cosmonity. It is something like that. That is why we call it cosmonity. Cosmonity, a speculative term for the future scenario. The question comes, what has changed across the period, across this place in which we are working? So, during the traditionality era, the collective forms of human life was centered around the field and the fort, which means they were based on agriculture, and so the field and fort was the central point. If we talk about modernity era, the collective form of human life, it was centered around factory and the trading organizations, which means business came into the picture. Earlier we were agriculture oriented, and in modernity we started being industry oriented, and that is why the entire the collective form of human life, it was centered around factory and trading organizations. But if we talk about cybernity era, the collective form of human life is centered around the office, the workplace, and the networked corporate organizations, the organizations which are actually interconnected with each other, and that is why we call it cybernity era. So, here we have basically transformed ourselves from agriculture to industry, and then to the office or the place where it is a networked corporate organizations. But in cosmonity, the collective form of human experience is likely to be based on remote connectivity. So, we talk about, we dream about the remote connectivity, staying connected even if you are not in the office. So, we have actually moved out of the office, and beyond that office we are staying connected. So, we talk about the connectivity in a remote manner. Now, the question comes, what is the dominant form of economic activities across the era, whether it is traditionality or it is modernity or it is cybernity or cosmonity. What is the dominant form of economic activities across this era? I told you that in traditionality agriculture was the dominant form. In modernity the manufacturing came, economic activity became manufacturing. And in cybernity what happened? The dominant form of economic activities emerging around knowledge and services. So, we started talking about knowledge economy, we started talking about service oriented economy. So, to some extent we can say that right now we are living in an era which belongs to cybernity. You can say, because we are having service oriented economy, we talk about the knowledge oriented economy. But in cosmonity the dominant form of economic activity may be centered around interconnectivity, staying connected with each other. That would be the dominant form of economic activity. And we all know that during the traditionality era, the dominant form of institutional and organizational form was state, or what you call as kingdom. At that time there was nothing like government, it was a kingdom at that point of time, wherein during the modernity era multi-layered organizations started emerging, and they are engaged in different activities ranging from manufacturing and trading, and it became the dominant form of organizations in the society. If you ask me about the rise of business and business mentality, I can say this rise of business and business mentality was a dominant characteristic of this specific era, to which we call as modernity era, because business is actually fueling the entire economy and business orientation became the order of the day. In cybernity, if you ask me, I would say flexible matrix type of structures, having emphasis on participation and team orientation is emerging as a dominant form of organizational structure. So, in cybernity we are no more confined to the traditional business formats. We are having the type of structures which are flexible. They are matrix type of structures, but having flexibility. They have greater emphasis on, they put a lot of emphasis on participation. They talk about team orientation. They talk about following the leaders, and this is basically the outcome of this cybernity era. And in cosmonity, again we are back to the home, that is home based offices with remote connectivity and fishnet type of interconnections that may emerge as dominant form of organizational structure. I would be I'll be giving you a brief of all these in one table, that the way they have changed. So, when we talk about home based offices with remote connectivity and fishnet type of interconnections, we have witnessed the same during the pandemic of COVID-19, that nobody was able to visit office because of that pandemic, and then we felt of we could have we tested the taste of cosmonity, that this can also be done, that we are consulting a person, we are attending a lecture while being at our home. The examinations were conducted under open book examination. So, those changes were there under cosmonity. So, never thought of disease came, and it changed the entire way of functioning. All the organizations, they had to, nobody could ever think of the complete lockdown, and lockdown became the order of the day, it became the buzzword at that point of time. So, the cosmonity, example of cosmonity can be taken from the pandemic of COVID-19, where each and every function was redrafted, their processes were redesigned, their processes were recrafted, keeping in mind the requirement. So, if I have to show it in one table, I would say the way social transition from traditional to cosmonity has taken place. There are three important aspects here. The first one is, what is a dominant form of collective experience here. Second is, what is a dominant economic activity, and third is, what is the dominant organizational structure or form in that specific era. So, there are four eras, and these eras can be understood from these three important points, because they would actually give a reflection of their basic trait. If you ask me about the traditionality, I would say that the dominant form of collective experience was field and fort, wherein the dominant economic activity here was agriculture, and here the dominant organizational structure was state or kingdom. When we switch to modernity, the dominant form of collective experience became factory and trading organization. Dominant economic activity was manufacturing, and the organizational structure came like closed system, bureaucratic, autocratic, unionized labor. We got labor unions, the labors which are unionized. In cybernity, the dominant form of collective experience was office and corporate networking. Economic activity was service and knowledge, and the organizational structure came in the form of flexi matrix, network, participative, team oriented organizations. And eventually in cosmodity, I told you that again we are having the home based offices with remote connectivity, information based processes, they became the dominant economic activity. And lastly, the structural change which we are witnessing here is internet and interconnected fishnet now we talk about. So, there is some cost and benefit involved with this kind of change, the way we have traveled from traditionality to cosmodity, that I will be discussing with you in due course of my discussion. But I have tried to give you a brief intro of what do we mean by the omnijective theory of organizational development. I shall be telling you in detail about this entire idea in the next lecture of mine. I hope you must have enjoyed today's lecture of mine. Thank you so much.